Hello, class. So this is part 3 of the Shinto lecture. So if you haven't watched parts 1 or 2, or even the announcement video, I've said this at the beginning of each of these, go back and watch those, right? So that you're not jumping into this in the middle of the lecture. And they're all labeled in the titles of the videos, part 1, part 2, and then this will be labeled part 3. So go back and watch those if you have not. And so moving forward from where I left off, I went over what is ultimate reality according to Shinto in the last video. Now what we need to do is dive deeper, right? And what we need to think about and contemplate is the essential beliefs and how then those essential beliefs of Shintoism, right, then translate into the ways in which one should live in this world if they are a practitioner or a follower of this religion. So for the essential beliefs of Shinto, it's actually one of the simplest kinds of belief systems we've seen so far, because we've dealt with some very heady and complex religions throughout this semester. Hinduism as an example, right? Very complex and mysterious at times. So for Shinto, right, it's straightforward, is that one being a follower must be sensitive to the mysterious powers of nature. And if you all have gone into nature, right, which you all should do, right, you go into a park or you go hiking or something like that, is even if you're not a follower of the Shinto faith, right, is that you can kind of, if you take it all in and you slow down and you observe it, understand this mysterious kind of power to nature. So those of the Shinto faith must be sensitive to these mysterious powers and be knowledgeable and understand, right, the role of nature in our everyday life. And because kami, or spirits, are gods, is that they are the energy forces, if you will, that animate nature, and that they should be treated as persons. Meaning that kami, although they are spirits or gods, is that they should be treated as persons. And that one can know the kami. One can actually know and experience the kami in a very similar way to Hindus who believe that they can know Brahman, right? This cosmic energy force. Is that for those of the Shinto faith, is that they believe they can know the kami, right? And that when one dies, when we all die, which we all will at some point, right? No one lives forever, is that when we die, we become a kami, right? We become a spirit. We become part of the natural world, and that then we continue this cycle, right? And that then our descendants will then continue to show reverence to us and things like that. So for this, right, those of the Shinto faith believe that we need to be sensitive to the mysterious powers of nature, and that the kami inhabit nature, they animate it, and that when we die, right, we become part of this. So when we think of this, right, in this role of nature, again, to reiterate what I mentioned in the last video, is that those of the Shinto faith pay a particular amount of attention to the natural world, right, this reverence for the natural world because it is, right, inhabited by kami, by these spirits. So those of the Shinto faith pay attention to the changes of the seasons, right, as one example that demonstrates to followers, or at least illuminates, right, the presence of the kami. So even in our own, we're in Ohio, we're emerging away from winter, or coming out of winter and entering into spring, right? This is an example in our own kind of world, right, where we can make some connections here, and that you're probably starting to hear the birds in the morning, right? Is that all of these examples, it's not, we're not getting the blooms yet on the trees, and some flowers are starting, field flowers, etc., but is that we're starting to see these changes of the season, and therefore, right, we're starting to, at least we can observe, right, the presence of the kami. So in Japan in particular, the changes of the seasons are very important, and that there's festivals and things like that surrounding them. Refer to your textbook for more information on that. And in terms of worship, right, in terms of these essential beliefs that I've gone over, is that daily worship for a lot of those who practice this faith, right, occurs at one's home shrines, right, is that you can have a shrine in your house, right, that pays reverence or gives this moment for you to reflect on the kami, your ancestors, those kinds of things. Or you can go to a much larger shrine in villages and cities and parks all across Japan to help actualize, right, your connection to the natural world, but most importantly, to actualize your connection to the kami. That's why you should be watching the video on Shinto prayer and how that works in Moodle, right? And that will be for Friday's lesson, but you should watch it today. So those are the essential beliefs. Next, I'm going to move on to how we should live in this world, right? How one should live their life if you are of the Shinto faith, because we've gone over the background, ultimate reality, and the essential beliefs. Now, this is very simple, right, in comparison to other religions. So this starts on slide 9 in the PowerPoint, is that in the Shinto faith, in Shinto, right, there's very little discussion of morality. Instead, the religion tends to focus on fertile and sanctified living because it gets back to this idea of the natural world and that the natural world is inhabited by kami. So very simply, to live a good life, if you are of this religion, right, you have to be attentive to cleanliness and pure living. Is that one must appreciate and protect nature. And what the reason one does this is to show this kind of continual appreciation of the kami, or appreciation to the kami. So that's why when you look at Japan, this modern nation state, over 100 million people, right, live there, post-industrial, all of these things, is look up images of Tokyo and the streets of Tokyo and pay attention to how clean they are. It's no coincidence, right? Now contrast that with, say, Paris, France or something, or Rome, Italy. Trash all over the streets, right, etc. Is that this massive megalopolis of Tokyo, right, is so clean because there's this idea that we need to pay attention to this, right? Is although we live in this concrete kind of jungle, if you will, in Tokyo, Japan, is that there's still this connection to nature that we need to have, and that we must appreciate and protect nature and keep, right, clean living, clean habits, and things like that. And so I have an image in the PowerPoint, and you should also Google some of it because it's quite remarkable, right, to look at the cleanliness of these megacities in Japan. And that relates to the Shinto tradition, the Shinto culture. So that's how we should live in this world, right? We've gone over the essential beliefs, how one should live in this world, and then for the last couple minutes to close this out, right, and I'll do this as quickly as I can, I don't want to ramble on too much longer, is that now we've seen, right, how one must live in this world. We need to show appreciation to nature, we need to practice sanctified living, purity, cleanliness, all of those things. So to boil this all down to the ultimate purpose of life then, according to those of this faith, is that Shinto teachings on life's ultimate purpose are again straightforward, is that humans, according to this faith, are not flawed or sinful. And because humans are not born sinful, there is no need to ask the gods, or kami, if you will, for forgiveness, right? Is that it's not the same as some of the Abrahamic religions that we'll see moving forward. Is that there's no need to ask the gods for forgiveness, in other words, because we're not flawed or sinful in the same ways that some Western religions believe. And because of this, and because of these ideas, right, with the natural world and things like that, is those of the Shinto faith and Shinto teachings also explain that there's no final resting place in the heavens, if you will. Is that when we die, right, we don't transition into this kind of detached metaphysical world of heaven. And I'm using an analogy, or at least I'm relying on the lexicon of Western religions, right? It's not as if we transition to heaven, if you will, or to hell, or whatever. Is that instead, when we die, our resting place is in this reality, if you will, because we become kami when we die, right? We literally, our identity, our self, becomes a kami when we pass away. And then because of that, right, we then inhabit and occupy the natural world around us. So, and it's a little bit more complicated than the way I explained it, but that's what you need to know, right, is that there's no final resting place where we transition to that's detached from this reality, but rather, right, that when we die, we become kami and therefore kind of dissolve, if you will, into the natural world. And because of all of these things, there's no, original sin and things like that, is the only thing one should focus on in this life, in this life according to Shinto religion, is living a prosperous, clean, and purified life along with paying respects to the kami and deceased ancestors. That's all you have to do, right? And it's simple enough. And it is usually indigenous religions are simple. There's not, 10 commandments and so on and so forth. I'm over my time, so I'll close here. But there's not 10 commandments that say thou shalt not do this or that, or even thinking back to Hinduism in India, right? This caste system that you have to be in these roles and those kinds of things. Is that instead it's live a purified life, pay respects to the kami, pay attention to nature around you, preserve nature, take care of it, and all of those things. Now, again, research and you can see some of the more complicated aspects of these beliefs, but that's all you need to know, right, for the Shinto teachings. So what you should be doing now that this lecture is over, right, now that I'm concluding it, is that you should move on now to the reflection writing and think about the prompt, right, follow the instructions, right? You need to upload it, look at it, and read it. I'm not going to, do what you have to do is what I'm saying. And what the reflection writing is asking you to do is to think about, right, some of these ideas. And if you have ever experienced similar ideas, it doesn't mean necessarily that you are of the Shinto faith, right? But perhaps you've been, maybe you've gone to a national park or something like that, and you've been to the Rocky Mountains, let's say, and you've stood and looked at them, and there's this kind of mysterious power that overcame you or something like that, and respond to it. And if you haven't, right, read the prompt, and there's other ways to answer this question. But we all, for the most part, have experienced this. For me, as an example, right, when I've gone camping out east in New England, New Hampshire, Maine, and those kinds of things, being out in the wilderness and looking at rivers and streams and things like that, is you can feel these mysterious kinds of power as it relates to nature. And for those of the Shinto, right, that's how they feel the presence of the kami. Now for us, maybe we don't, right? And that all depends on your own personal beliefs. But you should still be doing this personal reflection writing. And as I mentioned in the announcement video, is get that to me by 5 p.m., right? Instead of 10:45, you can take until 5 p.m. to get it done. However, I would say just keep a normal pace with the class. The class starts at 9:30 usually. It's over by 10:45. You should follow that schedule. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. I would just say to kind of maintain some normalcy. So get that into me by 5 p.m. There's an upload box in Moodle. Type it up. First you download it, then type it up, and then submit it into that announcement box. And if you have any questions, right, it's about 8:05 now, just email me, text me, whatever you have to do, and we can work through it together. But that's it for today, right? This is the end of the lecture. Do the reflection writing, and then you're done for today. This is just normally how it would be on a Tuesday, right? It's just that we're doing it digitally now instead of handwriting out things and having this in-class discussion. But again, if you have any questions, just email or text me.